See, I see you now. You did something.
I moved my wheelchair.
Oh, that will work. Oh, let's see.
Can you hear me, Martha?
Yeah, I can. Sorry about that. I turned on the Zoom and then I went to the copier and picked up the document for today. I was off on Friday and didn't do a out of office thing, so that didn't go out like it should till today. Okay, turn that off. All right. Huh, interesting. Okay, well, we'll see if it'll work. Anthony, it looks like they used some of your transportation stuff. Liz Long sent a quote or some notes to Sheila.
Okay.
Have you looked at the document yet?
I the
The one you
I
sent to Samir and Craig?
I I I I started to go through it and started to find the agency recommendations and was going through that. That's why I but I didn't go all the way through.
Yeah, it looks like they're going to slip it into page 23. I don't know that Rocky had a chance to get it into the report, so that may come as an amendment. So, oh, what was I gonna do? No, it wasn't that.
And I'm wondering whether I should insert the just questions and answers for DOJ integrated employment. And there are no.
I'm sorry, what?
I was just thinking to myself,
Oh,
should we insert the DOJ questions and answers for integrated employment that they have on their website?
no.
Okay.
I think we could reference that. Rocky wants me to put a link to the Allied Global or Global Allied report that Governor Collier's office did on my website, and I don't know if I can or not. I mean, I can get it there, but he's already put the
Okay.
link. I don't know how he got a link to it, but
Well, no, as long as I was just, as long as it's there, that, or, I'm just saying, As long as the information's there, then
Okay, I'm getting a headache. This is not gonna work. Okay, I need some paper. Gosh, the 18th already.
Christmas is next week.
Yeah, and the shortest day is coming up on what, the 21st?
Close it down and we'll go in again.
Joe. Anthony.
Close it out and then we'll go in again. Oh, there it is. That's all I need.
Probably Rocky, not Sheila. She won't be here.
Did
I
you,
mentioned Brad and Steve.
I think you can talk now because it's not on mute
Yeah, I know, I did. I did.
and you
already.
signed in.
Yeah.
Okay, and then quit clicking on stuff.
Brad, Steve, Jim, Nikki. Who else? I'm sure Sarah, Steve, Brad, Rocky, Joe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2, 4, 6, 7. Okay. All right. I need to miniaturize my email so I don't look at it anymore. Excuse me. Um, okay. Well, could be a short meeting if nobody shows up, except the 3 of us.
Remember the old college rule, Martha, give it 10 or 15 minutes.
Oh, let's see. See, I have a meeting at the same time. The governor's staff meeting is today at 9. So I'll be getting Teams messages because I didn't sign in. Rocky and Mark.
Hey, Martha.
Morning. How are you, Rocky?
Good. Did you see I just sent over another document? Would you mind sending that out?
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
There
I
it is.
sent the original email on Friday.
Yeah.
So the one I'm sending over now has all adjustments that were made over the weekend. And so the version I'm sending over now is what we'll be using as our starting point.
Save as. And one bit first. Meetings. And 18th. Oh, okay. Replace. Print. Oh, I have to turn it off. Okay. Rocky, that should be coming out just momentarily.
Okay, great. We will stand at ease here just for a few moments to allow people to join.
That's great. Nikki, Sarah.
Okay. And you sent that out, Martha?
Yes, you didn't get it yet?
I'm not seeing it, but maybe my computer's slow.
Well, and it says it went out, so maybe something's going on. I don't have it yet either. Let's see if I can resend.
Yeah, just to be safe.
No, I'll do it again. Just write it up again.
Okay. Martha's just sending out the latest version. The version she sent out earlier this morning was the version as of Friday. And so this version includes any adjustments that were made over the weekend.
Looks like I finally got my courtesy copy, so you should be getting the copy with the updated document.
Okay, great.
Anybody else receive that?
Not yet. I got it.
You got it? Okay. Well, look for it in your inboxes. And I've just renamed that document to what's on the screen right now, to be the version after our meeting, because it's the one I'm going to be taking notes and making changes on in real time. But I will go ahead and also have you gotten it yet, Sarah?
I haven't. I've only received the one Martha sent at 8:21 this morning.
Okay, I sent it a second time, so hopefully.
I always get them, Martha, but
They've never been this slow before.
Monday morning technology.
Probably. Oop. There's the second one.
Okay, I'm sending it to all the commissioners who are on the meeting just in case it's getting slowed down in spam filters. Let's go ahead and get started, because I'll be displaying this on the screen here in real time as well. So we have a meeting set for today and one set for tomorrow. I think we have a version of the report that's pretty good. Thanks to everyone for your work on the writing of this report. I think we're in pretty good shape. If we finalize the report today, then you'll get your Tuesday back. We won't have to meet tomorrow. Typically, the way we do this is we make sure that the report is what we want, that it has the right policies, the right recommendations in it. And then we had the commission act on it, and typically the commission acts on it and then allows, like, Martha and I to make any technical changes or changes that do not change the recommendations in the report. Just errors, omissions, you know, if the wording is a little confusing, correcting the wording so that it's more clear, but not changing any actual recommendations. That's usually a process that takes a couple weeks. I usually have a staff member or two at my agency also looking over, just to see, you know, are there any errors? Do we use there when we should have used there? Are there anything that's confusing? And then we get that done and get it sent to the legislature prior to the legislative session. All right, so Brad's on. We have a quorum, so let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go through the recommendations that came in from different commissioners. And so I've highlighted those in yellow. This yellow highlight's just for you, Martha, to if you can upload that Allied Global report, the PDF, work with your web people to like have a special, it'd be nice to have a special website to where if people clicked it, it would go straight to the report. That would be great.
Yeah.
And so I think we've got 3 ones to go over. The first was submitted by Sarah, and it involves phase out of 14C and sheltered work. We've made a recommendation later on in the report. The report's organized into recommendations to the legislature and the governor, recommendations to the governor and state agencies, and then recommendations of Congress. In the recommendations of Congress, there's already language about the commission recommending and supporting the federal bill that would phase out 14C over a 5-year period. And this is a recommendation to the legislature that they should pass a Kansas state law to phase out 14C. So, Sarah, you want to kind of explain this, and we can.
Sure, Rocky, I'll jump in here. So I know we had talked, I think, 2 meetings ago, just acknowledging some of the federal action on this particular issue. We know that this is certainly embedded in some of the employment first work that KU is doing. So I had suggested to Rocky late last week that we probably need to address this with some state action as well around the policy, acknowledging the work that, you know, several states have already done to phase out 14C across the country. I think we're close to almost 20 states that have taken action. And so this language just really reflects and mirrors the bipartisan legislation that's moving at the federal level, and, you know, acknowledges the discrepancy in the wage issue for current 14C providers in Kansas. So that's the language I drafted for Rocky to include in this particular report.
Right. Yeah, and this is consistent with our recommendation last year as well, where we recommended that the RFP be written for the successful vendor to come up with a plan to phase out the use of sub-minimum wage over a 5-year period as well. Yes. And so I think it's consistent with our prior position there. It's consistent with the federal law, and it's something that I support and want to see in this report. I just want to pause and get any feedback from commissioners I'll toggle through it as well for those who are,
Yeah.
although it should be in your inbox also, because Martha sent it out.
Yeah.
Any comments from commissioners on this?
Okay, it looks good.
Looks good to you, Brad? Okay.
Yeah, it looks good to me.
I agree. I think that looks great.
Okay. All right. Any concerns about including this in our report?
No.
Okay. Well, let's go forward to the next one. Let me just toggle through. Give me a second. Okay, so the next one, I think that was Nikki, the project search. Do you want to cover this one, Nikki?
Yeah, that was me and Phil and Steve, Craig, that's the group of us that talked about this, but yeah, we just talked about basically following project search's best practices with funding to be able to expand it. So we just thought that it would be good to explain what project search is and why it would be a good idea to expand it, because it has such a high rate of competitive integrated employment. It's a high success rate, but explaining why it's a problem, that the current fiscal structure basically is that the school district currently has most of the financial responsibility, but that is not best practice. So we're just recommending that we follow project search's best practice for funding. I think if you scroll down, that is where we describe what that best practice is. Voc Rehab is required to spend 15% of their funds on pre-employment transition. And so we're recommending that they use some of that 15% to support project search.
Okay. And I know when this was discussed at the commission and we appointed the working group, and thank you all for coming together and writing this. I know one of the things Steve said is that, you know, right now you can see projects searching currently in a couple of cities, but it's not a systemic program. It's not statewide. And these recommendations would say, hey, this is an evidence-based program and it ought to be something that's available across the state, which I think is great.
Yeah, Stacy Martin from KSDE was able to attend the work group, and
awesome.
She volunteered that KSDE would be happy to help market the program as well. And so we also suggested that if KSDE had a contact person, so Dr. Watson has been very supportive of talking about the importance of competitive integrated employment with both special education administrators and superintendents. And so we thought if we could build on that current momentum and have one point of contact within KSDE, even if that point of contact was, here, let's get you in touch with Cheryl Locker, and here's how to get project search going. But if there was a familiar face that KSDE could point administrators to on how to get started and just have that be formalized, that would be helpful in just getting it started. So that was built in the recommendation as well.
Great. Anything else from any other member of that working group that wrote this recommendation? I think it looks really great to me.
Yeah, this is Steve. I just wanted to say that Stacy was just great to work with on this, and really did have some even better ideas than what I had on how we could implement it. So it was great having her join us for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Let's continue through. I think we have at least one more highlighted in yellow, which is something new since our last report or our last version.
Yep, transportation.
Transportation, yeah, and that was Sheila and Liz, and I know all commissioners are on right now except for Sheila. She couldn't be on this morning. Liz, I don't want to put you on the spot, but
It's
do you
fine.
mind chatting about this?
No,
Yeah.
I don't mind at all. I do have to head out about 9:30, so the timing's good. So Sheila and I put some thoughts to paper around this. The one thing that I didn't do yet, I know that, Anthony Fidel has, done some work with the Department of Transportation around accessibility plans. And, it might be worth reaching out to him to see if he had any, reaction to our recommendations, to see if he had any other ideas based on his interactions with KDOT. But I think meeting with KDOT directly and look with our group, and then taking further recommendations from them to the legislators and the governor would be time well spent in the next year. We feel like this is another place where funding may be better organized, is the way I'm going to put it. That we talked about, stipends and that kind of thing, and you can read, but awareness around them and what it does and doesn't cover. And I wasn't aware of this. This was Sheila's contribution. The Kansas Mobility Managers is a pretty, right there at the top bullet where you're at right there, Rocky. You can Google Kansas Mobility Managers. It's a pretty cool program. So I was excited to learn something new and definitely leverage them. And then I put some links in here. This last bullet, I don't know if we want to leave that in or not. It's just a resource. I would like to see transportation expanded and what can be covered. And I made the suggestion around social determinants of health and how, it's more than just getting to the doctor, right? And how if we have transportation, like some of our work programs cover transportation, so you can get to work, so you can, all those things tie together, right? And so I don't know if we want to leave that final bullet in there. I'd appreciate everybody, it is what's allowed federally.
Right.
That's what that link takes you to. It's a lot of federalese. And so it's really more of a reference. I don't know that we need to leave that in for the final version, but maybe I don't know if we do like a reference page or anything at the end. I could see it as if somebody was really interested in digging down deeper and having that available. I don't know whether you want it really in there. And hey, Anthony, I see you're on.
Yeah.
So,
and I do have one question. I do want to call on Anthony and get his input, but I do have one question first. And by the way, I like including the CMS guidance.
okay.
I think it's helpful because we're making
because
these recommendations and it provides context. So I think that's very helpful. I did have one question. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, just that, I think people hear NEMIT and they think, well, not emergency, so it must be any transportation then that isn't, but it's really just medical and it's pretty limited. I went through it as part of my homework and really I don't see expansion to the definition of what's covered.
Right.
You could expand populations and that kind of thing, but so.
Okay, so
anyway.
my one question was, so you've got the mobility managers and I saw that the kind of the core recommendation is get together with the Secretary of Transportation, other cabinet level secretaries, is to essentially, and I use the term summit, you didn't use the term summit, I don't think, but I tried to figure out how to put a frame around this meeting, because you're trying to get everyone together on the same page on transportation, right? Because
Right.
transportation is one of those things that seems to have vexed us, that we're just not sure what we can or can't do, and it's something that's a key barrier. And so you're getting together the secretaries, you're getting together stakeholders. And when I say you, I mean the commission would be doing this, that we're making this recommendation. At that, are you recommending that, I was unclear, are you recommending that these Kansas mobility managers be one of the stakeholders at that meeting? Or is that a separate meeting with the mobility managers?
I think she wants to do a separate meeting.
Separate? Okay.
And it might be worthwhile to meet with them to inform the summit. But yeah, there's so many different agencies involved in transportation in different ways, right? And they all kind of have a component for folks with disabilities. And I think it would be worth bringing some attention to folks like that. You could also, I don't know that you need to add this to it, but just thinking around, you know, we talk about emergency transportation, but also in emergency, like when we have ice storms and when we have tornadoes, you know, making sure that all those different groups have contemplated what that means for folks with disabilities, I think would be useful as part of that discussion, but we can move on with that. But
I think it's
Okay.
very important too, Liz. It's like the #1 barrier to employment. So I think it's really important that we put that in there and keep that in there, in that we somehow, some way maybe connect when we talk about, you know, certain types of payments when services become unbundled. Maybe we could potentially add some additional dollars in there for the support and employment provider to provide that transportation. I mean, to me,
Yeah.
that's the only way I feel like it can work, because we can't go city by city, county by county kind of thing, you know?
right. Well, and I think part of it is building awareness in those cities and counties of I think there's this perception that, oh, somebody else does that, you know?
Right.
And oh, there's services for that. But if you don't qualify for a waiver because you make too much money, or you know, aren't Social Security disabled, but still have needs that make accessible transportation important. And by accessible, I don't mean just like, does it have a wheelchair lift, but also does it have, is it affordable? So I don't think folks understand that impact. I mean, I live 30 minutes north of Topeka, and people can't get good jobs because they can't get to them, you know? And so, anyway, Martha had her hand up, so.
Yeah, Martha had her hand up, and I do want to call on Anthony at some point. But Martha, did you have something you wanted to mention here?
Renee Hart is the contact in Department of Transportation. She's in charge of the public transit grants and stuff. On my website, under the disability service maps, I have a link to the Department of Transportation's website. I guess it's actually the KU Transportation website, and the mobility managers are listed there so that you know who they are, but they don't have them for the entire state yet. Those folks help map out transportation for people who need to cross counties, for people who need to go to different places. So they're really helpful for folks who are clueless about what their transportation options are. So just wanted to Renee Hart, I can connect you with.
I think that just reconnects with the idea that all the services that we tie in with the workforce center, just saying that out loud.
I want to be sure we call on Anthony. I know you've spent a lot of time thinking about transportation issues. Anthony, thoughts on what's here?
I think Liz's points are just my quick read. I didn't get all the way through, but I can say that when the long-term or the Kansas Active Transportation Plan was approved in March, this type of plan is over, let's say, 15 years. So not every project or program has been implemented or put in or thought of yet. And this may very well be part of what could be considered. I can't judge that, but the concepts that were being talked about as far as accessible transit, accessible communities, accessible ways to employment, those would all fit within this potential framework for them to consider what might work for them. So I think it's worth putting it in here and saying we need to meet with the relevant folks and say, you know, what can and can't be done, like Mitzi and Liz were talking about. So my own view is and being part of the core team that helped develop the concept, I don't think it would be, this is conceptually, you know, broad enough that they could fit it in any way they had to meet their requirements. We're not trying to, the way I read this, we're simply saying, hey, people need accessible transportation in order to get to work. It needs to be integrated and people need to know how to do it. And like Liz said, you need to have not just the accessibility in terms of mobility or wheelchair, but the affordability, and then not only that, but the idea that you can actually link to locations and get you to where you have to go, from rural to urban and so on. So, I mean, my initial view is I think this is certainly appropriate to present to them, and then we can work with them to make it fit everybody's frameworks. I mean, that's just my initial view.
Okay, thanks for that feedback. Do we think that this is the right kind of recommendation to invite all the secretaries together to have this meeting? Kind of explain a little more, Liz, what you guys were thinking, or just give us a little more background on that.
This was really Sheila's suggestion. And so I can only guess. I know from my perspective, it would really be, and I'm just going to take a leap here because of just my experiences with other things, right? I mean, you've got KDOT, right, that they do a plan. You've got Commerce, who clearly has impact on transportation, but also the employment piece. And, you know, we have a tiny little piece. KDADS has a tiny piece. VR funds some transportation. I think just having a conversation with the folks so that they understand how they all interrelate, because they just don't, I think they don't pay attention to that. And we don't do a good job always of cross agency conversations. And so I think it would be a just opportunity for us to raise awareness of the need. Instead, it would also be a place where we could bring stakeholders together so that they could hear from a larger group of folks with disabilities that can say, this is what we need, because it's really, easy for agencies to get into that mindset of, well, this is accessible. We'll make sidewalks 5 foot wide. If it doesn't get you to the part of town where your services are or where you work, it's not going to be helpful, right? So I think bringing those folks as it's a listening opportunity would be really valuable. Sheila might say something different, but
That makes sense.
yeah,
I'm tracking it.
mean, it's never going to hurt to get those folks at the table to talk about what folks with disabilities need. I think they lose track of that when, we're dealing with contractors building roads and stuff. Anyway, I have to hit the road. I'm headed to Salinas. So just if there's any other follow-up you need, let me know, and I'll watch the email traffic. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. And I think that was the only other thing. Yeah, that was the only thing that was highlighted. So let me just unhighlight everything now that we've gone over it. Okay. So yeah, the version you all got Friday had everything in it that was in the version Martha emailed out this morning, except for the recommendation that Sarah went over earlier. But that's been sent to you as well, and we've covered that. So really, we're at the point of our work where we are pretty close to the finish line. We've got an extensive document here. It goes over a number of recommendations. And if we're able to, my goal is to finalize the recommendations on this call, and then, have the commission vote on it. And then it can go through an editing process, not to change any of the recommendations, but if, just wording essentially, or if it's unclear what something is, or if there's a typo or grammar or things of that sort.
Rocky,
then of course,
this is Martha. I'm not sure if this is the right place to interject, but we've had big documents like this before. I'm wondering if an executive summary would be appropriate for those folks who just want to get the basics when we go send it to the legislature and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's very appropriate. That it depends on what the commission is comfortable with. If executive summary is going to be done, someone's going to have to do it, and then we'd probably have to either have the commission be comfortable with that, as long as that summary is faithful in summarizing what our recommendations are, then we could endorse that as part of taking action on this report, and just like have a subgroup of the commission finalize that executive summary. If not, we'd have to set another meeting to come back together to go over that executive summary. Oh, and by the way, the names will all fall off of this. That's just so I know who wrote it, so that as we're working through it, particularly for our state agency friends, don't worry, no, it won't say different names on it. Let me open up to commissioners, see what you guys think, and see what changes, if any, commissioners want to make.
Yeah, Rocky, this is Steve. And, I'm comfortable with a small group just pulling together an executive summary of this. And I think we ought to just pick our top, 4 or 5 things that we'd really like to see happen. And I think there are some that would have a major impact. There's some that are probably more minor. And I'm comfortable with a couple of commissioners figuring that out and just doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think
Rocky?
I think on the legislative ones, the recommendations to the legislature and the governor, we only have a few recommendations. So I feel pretty comfortable just listing those recommendations and summarizing them. Because that part of the summary is what the legislators are going to want to know, right? They're going to want to know, well, what do you want me to do?
Right.
Yeah.
And so we only have just a couple of different recommendations here to the legislature. So that can be summarized pretty easily. Are you then suggesting, should we, like the ones to the state agencies and the governor, are you suggesting that we like put those in some type of priority order, or just pick some of the ones that we think are the most important? Not that some of them aren't important, they're all important, but or are you suggesting that we just keep working through that list and just make an executive summary that would take each of these recs and just break it down to as few words as possible?
Yeah, I'm thinking more along the lines of the last part of that it's just that there's an executive summary that, somebody can look at and get the gist of what the main things are that we're doing, and then the rest of it becomes just the background information for it.
Got it.
Because we've got some big ask in this and we've got some little ask in there.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Rocky, it's Sarah. Two quick things. Definitely always an executive summary, and I'm happy to be part of that core team that helps with the drafting of that. The other, I just think it would behoove us to look at, I know we have a series of recommendations to the legislature, to the governor, but I think there's a lot in just the acknowledgement that the role the private sector has to play in the unemployment crisis in Kansas. If we could build out, and I don't think it's really, writing any new text, but basically having a separate section on private sector solutions and taking some of those recommendations and folding those into kind of that new section.
That's a good idea. Yeah, because there are several things in here where we're recommending an interaction with or promotion of the private sector. So yeah, that would be good. And then that can also potentially be yeah, we'd have to play with the formatting a little bit. Again, we're not changing any recommendations. We're talking about formatting. Yeah, I think we can do something really good around that.
Awesome.
Other thoughts on that?
I'm trying to figure out, how do we engage the private sector? I mean, we can pull that together, but how do we actually get it to, private sector employers or whoever our audience is, that we actually are communicating? Do you have any ideas on that?
Absolutely, Steve. One of the recommendations in the report is to have the Secretary of Commerce convene CEOs and business leaders, CHROs from around the state. That could be one potential strategy with that particular summit. The other would be working through the state chamber and local chambers to ensure that this information and these series of recommendations gets disseminated amongst their business, their members, as well as, another stakeholder that I think often gets forgotten in a lot of these conversations is SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management, who has a very active chapter, not just in Kansas statewide, but I think in some of our major cities across the state.
Okay, yeah, I think that would work. That gives us a mechanism to what we want to communicate, and then a method to communicate. So I'm good with that.
And then if we have it in a format where those recommendations interacting with the private sector are one place in the report, then that makes it a lot easier to engage those private sector stakeholders, because it can be, it can be pretty intimidating that, here's this very long report. What am I supposed to do with this? Oh, here's your recommendations. Here's them right here. These are the ones we want to talk to you about.
Yes,
That makes sense.
absolutely. And even, I mean, Nikki's fantastic recommendation on some of the project search alignment and engagement. I mean, at the end of the day, many of the project search sites are private sector companies and businesses around the state, who probably, oftentimes don't even realize that project search is a tool in the toolbox. So I think even acknowledging some of these solutions and opportunities to engage with our community, could be part of that outreach mechanism.
Makes sense. So Sarah has volunteered to be on the, so putting together a committee to write an executive summary. So we got Sarah. I'll be on that. Are we allowed to have 3, Martha, without having to do the whole open meetings thing?
No,
we have
we need to have open meetings for any ad hoc committee.
Okay, any ad hoc committees. Okay, that's fine. We can just
we can send
inform
that
people of the
out.
meeting. That's fine. That's not an issue. Anyone else want to serve on this?
Sheila's the only one not here, but she might be interested.
Normally, I would
volunteering.
volunteer.
I hate
Normally, I would
volunteering people. Go ahead, Nikki.
Normally, I would volunteer, but I just can't this week, so I am sorry.
That's okay. And it wouldn't have to be, I mean, I would really like to put all this to bed before the 1st, if at all possible. So it would be this week and after Christmas next week. Okay. Anyone else? If not, it could just be the 2 of us. I'll put you on there, Martha, just as staff to make sure that we're legal on everything we do.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. All right, so we'll do that. And then let's keep working through the report. What changes or adjustments do commissioners want to see in the report? And thankfully, I think everyone's done a really good job writing it. And I think we've covered a lot of different things. There'll be a lot there for decision makers and policy makers to sink their teeth into. Craig, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to word this. I think I love the recommendations in here. I do have one concern regarding the transition to Competitive Integrated Employment Act, and I agree with that 110%. I just want to make sure that we're clear what we're moving towards, and that we're moving towards competitive integrated employment. My concern is, and this is coming from people who may not be familiar with what the terms mean, when I'm thinking of legislators, that they perceive the problem as being sub-minimum wage. And that's the problem, not the fact that it's not competitive integrated employment. And so I think it's important that we, specifically spell out that, and it says transition to competitive integrated employment. But I'm concerned that there will be an interpretation that if we get rid of sub-minimum wage and we provide minimum wage within facility-based work, that will solve the problem. And I want to make sure that we don't move towards that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
I hear you.
Yeah,
Did you want to say something on that, Brad?
I kind of agree. I agree, but I wonder if there's a way we could just emphasize that in the report that we do want to move toward competitive integrated employment and not just get rid of 14C and then move on to something else. So,
I'll try to wordsmith something while we're all looking at it
okay.
here. Other thoughts on what Brad and Craig said?
Yeah.
I don't know, that I just came up with that off the top of my head. Does that look okay? Does that and I'll highlight
Thank you. So I can see.
the new part.
Rocky, I'm wondering about the structure of that sentence, if it would make more sense to put that towards the end, that we're wanting, a minimum wage or above in integrated community settings or something like that.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Okay, at least
That looks better.
in integrated settings, because community is not defined by law where integrated is. It's defined in the Employment First Act.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The integrate is the really important part for me.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm still wondering if we need competitive or something else in that too, because there are entities that do just reverse integrate their sheltered workshop and then they claim they've met that too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you just reverse engineer your shelter workshop and pay at least minimum wage, you're not meeting the integrated part of the definition.
Well, there would be some places that I know that just hire some people off the street and then they claim that their shelter workshop is integrated because there are other people working there too.
Right.
I forgot about that. You're exactly right, Steve. We do have to prevent that from occurring because that has happened before in the past.
Yep.
Good memory.
Trying to get the wording right. Let's see.
So a competitive wage, because competitive is not just minimum. It has to be minimum and customary to what others get paid in a similar job.
Yeah, I like that wording a lot better. I know of, organizations that pay over minimum wage, but they're still not competitive. I mean, if
Right.
the individuals who are working,
Yeah.
In this setting were, working in a factory doing the exact same thing, they'd be making 3 times as much money.
Yep.
Rocky, one thing I was thinking about this over the weekend as well. you know, we have a number of Kansas-based companies that also have 14C in their supply chain across Kansas. I'm talking, you know, for-profit companies that have those relationships with, you know, our 17-ish sheltered workshops in Kansas. I wonder if there's a way to also address that or have better transparency as to who those for-profit businesses are, because I see that semi-problematic as well. Well, not semi-problematic, it's problematic.
Right. Do you have a specific recommendation to wrap around that? I'm just trying to think how to do that.
Well, I wonder, I don't know, Craig, what the USET is looking at in terms of the work that you're doing in this area, but, you know, I've seen it firsthand, you know, and obviously for those for-profit businesses across the state, you know, they're contracting with sheltered workshops to get a good service done. You know, had they still need to get that good service done. If they're doing it outside of the center-based environment, they'd have to pay minimum wage. So I don't know if there's a way to align that challenge with, you know, what we need to change going forward.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Anybody have any thoughts on how to what
It
to
could
do with
also
that?
go, Rocky, it could also go in the, just to make it a little bit more complimentary, it could also go in the private sector category. You know, companies like Microsoft, Walmart, and others have made this a priority to eliminate 14C and sheltered work from their supply chains. So it could also be something that we align in that particular section of the report.
Yeah.
That's true. Do people have are commissioners supportive of doing that? Having some language in the section where we kind of pull together here's all the recommendations that interact with the private sector, to have a section in that, to have a part in that section that addresses this. What do folks think about that?
I think.
And I'm just trying to put into that was just talked about competitive integrated. So I added this
Yeah.
sentence, which kind of mirrors what we did up here.
Okay. I think.
Yeah, this is Steve, and I'm trying to think through that. I mean, it's much better practice to not have 14C in your supply chain, but technically it is still legal in our state, but it's not a good practice. So I'm trying to figure out, how do we call that out?
Yeah, well, Steve, so I just participated in a congressional briefing about a month ago or so, 6 weeks ago, with Senator Casey Melwood, who is a large service provider in the Maryland area, who voluntarily phased out 14C ahead of their Maryland legislation. And then Microsoft spoke about how they've removed it from their supply chain. And obviously they're a company that has a presence in probably just about every state. So, you know, they went ahead and, you know, made this a priority top down company wide in states that, you know, currently legally have 14C. So I think there's a good precedent that we could lean on some best practices with, you know, companies that have a national presence.
So it'd be a recommendation to companies to also as they're making decisions on, you know, which vendors they're working with, et cetera, that we're recommending that they make decisions to specifically engage companies who do competitive integrated employment of people with disabilities, not 14C. We wouldn't, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, so and I just added that additional language here. We're talking about the clarifying language. Any questions on that?
No. Smooth screen.
First on the 14C, recommendation to the state legislature. Any questions, issues with that?
Looks good.
Let me try to encapsulate what Sarah was saying here. So we're gonna reformat this. I'm gonna organize it so that we have a
Yeah. There you
private
go.
sector engagement section. We may call it something different, but just to
Get it down.
something down, yeah.
Yep.
And as part of that, we take the recommendations below and put them in that section and add a new recommendation to encourage private businesses to work with vendors that do competitive integrated employment. And not those that use 14C certificates.
And Rocky, I dropped in just a quick blurb on just Microsoft as one particular example, some of the terminology and language that they've been using. I dropped that in the chat.
Okay.
Do you think we could get permission from Microsoft to put that actual blip of code of conduct into our report or reference it in our report?
Absolutely. Yes.
Because I think that gives an
too.
example. Yeah, that gives a good example.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve.
It's public, so it's not like it's proprietary. Fair use would say we can reference anything that's in the public domain. We're not making money off of it or monetizing it. So, I mean, if we can get Microsoft's endorsement, that would be awesome. But if we don't, we can still report on it.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to talk with Rylan about, utilizing their example and their best practice. She would be probably even more than willing to come, speak or support our efforts on this.
Yeah, I think that just gives the recommendation a lot better legs.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Okay, so I copied and pasted what Sarah put in the chat. We're good about including that? If so, then that'll be part of our writing assignment is, would be to write that up.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other, changes commissioners want to see to the report?
That's good. Let's see.
Anything else you can think of, Brad or anyone?
Overall, I think it looks good. Trying to think if there's anything else.
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot. I think this is a really good,
Yeah.
good report. I mean, there's going to be a lot that for people to go through, but that gives lots of opportunities for policymakers and decision makers to take parts of this and run with it. So I like that.
I like that idea too. So.
Yeah, I think we're real close on this, and just appreciate you being a taskmaster, Rocky, and keeping us all in line and getting this done.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like, unless there's something I'm missing, it looks like we can finish this process today. So I'm going to start typing a potential motion that I'd like to entertain.
Okay.
To make sure we get it down correctly.
Okay.
And I'll be willing to make the motion, Rocky.
Okay.
And this is Brad. I'll second it.
Okay. Give me a second here. Let's make sure that what I'm typing here is what we want.
Yeah.
Format it.
Yeah, there you go.
And to create a new recommendation as detailed below.
Yeah.
Wording. Okay. Does that look like?
Yeah.
That's what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This committee. Let me just be clear. And then just making clear the scope of this committee, that we've got to show fidelity to these recommendations. We're not rewriting things. It's these recommendations, and then our changes have to be limited.
Yep.
To clarify, correct typos, grammar problems, things like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that look right? If so, I'd entertain that is a motion. Sounds like Steve said he would make it and Brad said you would second. Is that right?
Yeah,
Still there.
still there.
Okay, it's been moved by Steve, seconded by Brad. Any additional discussion?
No, looks good, Rocky.
All right, call the question. So commissioners, please indicate you support this motion by saying aye, raising your virtual hand now.
Aye.
Aye,
Okay, I see hands going up and ayes. All right,
Aye.
aye.
Nikki raised a real hand. I appreciate that. Any commissioners opposed?
Nope.
Seeing none, the motion passed. One housekeeping thing, Martha. Are we gonna have minutes from today's meeting and will you? I'll send this out, by the way, as soon as we're done. So you'll have, Martha, you'll have this language of what the motion was. Are you gonna produce minutes for us?
I can do that.
Okay, that would be great.
There we
And
go.
then I should have asked about this before, but I noticed we did not have any minutes from our prior meetings. Is that something that we need to?
I don't know that
We-
I don't
we
know
did-
that there's a requirement for that. I've never been
Okay.
told that. I usually do them, but because you were making all of the changes and everything, it just seemed kind of redundant to try and
Yeah.
do that.
Well, there were no actions in the prior meetings. The prior meetings were work meetings where we were talking through
Right.
things, discussing them. Basically this process,
Right.
sharing the screen and making changes on the fly. So I just wanted to make sure that we were okay there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Anything else for the good of the order?
Sounds good.
If not, we will cancel the meeting tomorrow. We've concluded our work. And given this motion, the committee will move forward and implement this motion.
There we
Thanks,
go.
everyone. Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Good day.